Hey, what's up you guys, it's UBFire bringing you guys another Genshin Impact weapon comparison video. The Snow Tomb Starsilver against the Blackcliff Slasher. Just a shout out, I do have two other videos on comparing each weapon, so please make sure to check that out. Now, if you've seen this video, make sure to skip to this timestamp because it's literally going to be a copy and pasta of what I discovered about the Snow Tomb Starsilver. Now, the only reason why I feel like this is even comparable is because of the character Xinyan. Xinyan's ultimate is based off of physical damage, meaning that this physical stat is amazing on her. But because I also have her at Constellation 2, I will, no matter what, always crit, meaning that I could stack the hell out of the crit damage. So honestly, this video is more of like which weapon is better on Xinyan. If you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel, it would do me a great favor because it took me a while to take in all of the data and to compare both weapons. Anyways, enough talking, let's just get right into the video. Now, what better way to test these weapons than the one and only Xinyan? I do have a video on Xinyan, but my Xinyan has indeed grown since then, and let's go ahead and take a look at her stats. So these are her artifacts. I am running the Bloodstained Chivalry and the Noblesse Oblige. Garbage, garbage, garbage. Oh, garbage, garbage. These are her talents and her constellations. These are her overall stats. Now that you've seen all of her stats, let's just get to testing. So her first basic auto attack, it seems to be hitting for 771 and she crits for 1916. For her spin attack, she does do a constant 800 and for the crit 2016. Now let's move on to her skill. Her skill E damage does 2350 damage and for her crit it does 5919. Now moving on to her ulti, the ulti will always crit because I have her at Constellation 2. It did basically around 16k, or if you want to be specific, 15,972. Now of course I don't want to be constantly throwing numbers at you, so I will have a number comparison at the end of the video. But now comes the very interesting part of the weapon. This weapon has a two-part effect. When hitting an opponent with a normal or charged attack, it has a 60% chance of forming and dropping an Everfrost Icicle above them, dealing 80% AoE attack damage. But opponents affected by Cryo are dealt 200% attack damage and can only occur every 10 seconds. Now, let's just get this misunderstanding out of the way first. Now, what this means is that whenever the enemies are affected by Cryo, the Everfrost Icicle will deal 200% attack damage instead of dealing 80% attack damage. Not whenever an enemy is affected by Cryo, your attack will now deal 200% more damage. No, that is completely wrong and misleading. But you can actually even say that this weapon has a 6-part effect instead of 2. Yup, 6 parts. Now let's take a look at it. Whenever the icicle dropped, the damage was 503 when I was basic attacking, but when I was spinning, the attack went from 503 to 647. This is where everything started to get a little bit more complicated than I thought. You can see here that when I crit with the icicle while basic attacking, I was hitting for 1266, but on the other hand, when I was spinning, I had a crit of 1630. So this basically means that depending on which attack you're going to do, it changes the number. Now you might be wondering, if that's the case, would the number change if the icicle landed not on the first basic attack but on the second one? Well, I tested it and nothing happened. So that's a busted myth. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the second part of the weapon effect. I had Chungyang here to afflict the enemy with a Cryo effect. Whoa, did you just see that? Let's see that one more time. Why was I dealing much more damage when I was basic attacking with Chungyang's E than when I didn't? So does that mean that you really do get the 200% attack when the enemy is affected by Cryo? Well, if you go to your local Genshin Honey, link in the description, you can look at the Ruin Guard stats. The physical resistance is a lot more higher than the Cryo resistance. So what did I do? I went to go test it. I found an enemy that had the same amount of physical resistance and cryo resistance, and lo and behold, the result is what you expected. I did a lot more damage with the basic attack than when in Chunyoung's ability.
But Yumifire, you're converting the attacks to cryo, so of course it doesn't apply.
Well, that brings me back to the clip that I showed you earlier. Xinyan still did the same amount of damage even though he was affected by cryo. But then that also made me question, what about the icicle itself? Would it do more damage to an enemy that had less resistance to cryo and deal less damage to an enemy that had high resistance? And nope, it didn't matter as well. Although it does say icicle, it doesn't mean that the attack itself is cryo. The reason why the cryo whopper was taking much more damage is because of the difference in levels, and even the damage isn't that far apart. So just imagine if they were on the same level, they both would be taking the same amount of damage. Now going back on track here. The damage dealt by the icicle when the enemy was affected by cryo was 1257 with the basic attack, and for the spin attack it did 1618. And these are the crits. Now you can kind of see why this was so complicated and basically a 6-part effect. 1 for the effect itself, 2 while the enemy is under cryo, and 3 the basic attack, 4 for the spin attack, and the same for the second part of the condition as well, making this practically a 6-part effect. Now let's just go ahead and move on to the Blackcliff Slasher. We're going to be following the same format, going from the basic attacks, skill damage, and then the ulti. We won't be covering the weapon effect, and I'll touch up a little bit more about that when we get to the number comparison. So for the first basic attack, it was 603 and the crit was 1853. The spin attack was doing a constant 643 and the crit was 1976. The skill damage was 2216 and the ulti was 15,852. Now these are the number comparison side by side. You can already see off the bat that the basic attack from the Starsilver is a lot more higher than the Blackcliff Slasher. Same thing with the spin attack, it was only 600 on the Blackcliff Slasher, and the spin attack on the Snow Tomb Starsilver was around 800. But for the crit, it was very almost the same. You can see that it had 1916 for the basic attack, but for the Blackcliff Slasher it has 1853. As for the spin attack, it was 2016, and for the Blackcliff Slasher 1976. So very close in terms of the crit damage. Now let's touch up a little bit more on why I did not get the stats for the effects on. So if you take a look at the Blackcliff Slasher, it says after defeating an opponent, the attack is increased by 12% for 30 seconds, and the effect has a maximum stack of 3 stacks. So that is indeed actually very huge. First of all, the test subject had no enemies around it, meaning that it can't even be procced. And even if there were enemies around, it would require me to kill it, which brings me to the next problem. Second, there is only a 30-second timer for each stack, so it's really hard to get all of that data within 30 seconds. And third, because the effect can't be stacked, the data will be looking something like this. And the main reason why I can't is because I actually leveled up my Xinyan. In the clip before, I was only level 80, but my Xinyan being level 89 would make all of the numbers I had before invalid. So hopefully you can understand why I decided not to get the data, because there's so many factors I would have to go through, so please, just cut me some slack. But taking a look at how much percentage the Blackcliff Slasher gives, and it can be stacked up to 3 times, you can assume that the Blackcliff Slasher will indeed do a lot more damage than the Starsilver in terms of basic attacking, spinning attack, and even critting in general. But now that we got the effect situation out of the way, let's just take a look at the ulti. So for the Blackcliff Slasher, it was doing 15,852, as to compare to the Snow Tomb Starsilver, it was doing 15,972. So you can see here that the Starsilver was indeed doing a lot more damage with the ulti rather than the Blackcliff Slasher. But that is with the Blackcliff Slasher with no effects on, and not only that, my artifacts are just straight up trash. But let's go ahead and talk about each of the cons and pros of each weapon. So for the cons about the Snow Tomb Starsilver is obviously the physical damage that it has for the primary stat. Because it has a physical damage for the primary stat, it's not viable for all characters. This weapon is more suitable for Xinyan and Razor as to compare to the other characters. The Snow Tomb Starsilver is not good on Diluc because whenever Diluc ulties, it changes his attacks to Pyro. For Beidou, Beidou is really prevalent on her E, so the physical damage doesn't really matter here. As for Chongyun, whenever you E, it changes his auto attacks into cryo damage. As well as for Noelle, whenever you ulti, it changes her damage to Geo. As to compare to the Blackcliff Slasher, it can work with any characters. I personally use the Blackcliff Slasher on Beidou, so this is why I love the Blackcliff Slasher. But another con for the Starsilver is that the effect is not as strong if you have no cryo. But you could say the same for the Blackcliff Slasher. The weapon effect is not easy to proc, and that is a very huge downside to the Blackcliff Slasher. But the upside to that is that if you do get the proc, your damage will go to insane heights. And a con for the Blackcliff Slasher is that it has low basic attack. Without any of the effects on, you're not going to be out damaging the Snow Tomb Starsilver at all. For the pros on the Starsilver is that yeah, it can out damage the Blackcliff Slasher in basic attacks without the proc on. And it is super easy to proc the weapon effect. All you gotta do is just hit them non-stop and sooner or later it will proc. And for the Snow Tomb Starsilver, it is much more easier to obtain. You can obtain the craftable materials from the weekly bosses, meaning that it is much more obtainable than the Blackcliff Slasher. The Blackcliff Slasher is very expensive because you have to use your Stardust Glitter in the shop, and in order to even get those Stardust Glitter, you have to actually pull. Now, a pro about the Blackcliff Slasher is that it can allow you to be more flexible with your artifacts. Because it has a primary stat of 55% crit damage, you don't have to particularly focus on critical damage anymore. You could just focus a lot more on critical rates. And if you have been playing this game for a very long time, I'm pretty sure you know how bad the RNG for the artifacts really is. It is super bad and it really sucks. So having the Blackcliff Slasher really does allow you to be more flexible. And another pro is that going based off of theory and just the numbers laid out for us right now, it can out damage the Snow Tomb Starsilver with the effects on. And if you're wondering what characters the Blackcliff Slasher you should put it on, it honestly can go on anybody. Like literally, I'm saying anybody. Because of the primary stat, critical damage, you can have a lot more freedom. But like I said at the very beginning of the video, this is more of like which weapon is better on Xinyan. Xinyan's kit just go really well with each of these weapons, which is why it's making this comparison even possible. If it was on any other characters, then I probably wouldn't even compare these two. But in terms of who wins here, I think I would have to say the Snow Tomb Starsilver. Her ultimate scales off of physical damage, and you can already see here that she's doing a lot of damage with her ulti as to compare to the Blackcliff Slasher. But at the same time guys, my RNG luck on my artifacts are really trash, which is why it came out to these results. So with the Starsilver doing a lot more damage with the ulti and with the basic attack doing a lot more, it is really obvious that the Starsilver is going to win in this situation. Anyways guys, I hope you guys liked the video and into choosing which weapon is better. I'm not saying that the Blackcliff Slasher is a bad weapon. I use it on my Beidou, and Beidou is one of my mains, so if you do want the Blackcliff Slasher, by all means go for it. And also, if you guys could hit that like button and subscribe to my channel, that would do me a huge favor, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good morning, have a good evening, and have a good night. Peace!